pursue in keeping with the requirements?
Thank you. Honorable Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Party Leader of MDG. Now, one of the perennial problems that we have in facing political parties is in the registration of members. Many times when you even attempt to register people, you find they've been registered in parties without their consent. How do you intend to deal with this problem once and for all? Because it's really a serious menace in this country. That's one. The second one, I want to refer you to the Constitution of Kenya 2010, Article 91, which deals with political parties, 91.2 on the basic requirements for political parties. And it indicates that a political party shall not be engage in violence or intimidation of opponents. C, establish a militia or similar organizations. And D, engage in bribery. Now, these vices are very rampant. I mean, if you watch news, you see those happening almost every weekend. So what I'm asking is, what action do you intend to take against these parties that are notorious for this kind of problems? Is it possible for you to deregister them, including even if it is a ruling party? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think very interesting questions. Remember, just remind you as Mr. John comes over, that even as in Parliament, we have a special committee that audits the Auditor General's findings on political party funds. I don't know who chairs it. Special funds must be done, Honorable Fatuma. Yeah, she should be able to tell us also how the political parties are doing in terms of how they use their funds. Vana Cox, kuja.
Thank you. Thank you again, honorable members and honorable speaker. Pick those questions that we have put across. I think some of them speak to things I already addressed earlier. And probably a few of them may be things that may need to speak to. Now, there was the question of the money, which I think I had spoken to earlier, whether how do we ensure that this money is spent in the way that it's stipulated by the Act. And I think I did give us some of the things that the parties do, one of them being submission of their plans for how they plan to do the activities for that year, and also the submission of their accounts, which are open to the Auditor General for purposes of reviewing them. Against what they presented, and those become compliance documents. A party is professionally registered. From that date of the issuance of the certificate, they have 270 days within which to now apply and come on board to full registration. If they don't comply within those that framework, then the certificate expires and they will be forced then to again redo the process, because they have to keep themselves alive to that time frame that is provided for them. I think I did speak earlier that section 7, subsection 9 of the Political Parties CAF 7D speaks of a party cannot belong to more than one coalition. You know, and a member of a coalition cannot belong to another coalition. I think I did go through that section earlier when I was doing my presentation. And I think there was also the question of the registration. What happens when a party is deregistered? There is a process. When a party is deregistered regularly, then there is provision for those for the memberships, especially those who are in active leadership roles, to make choices of where they want to go, and that the law that says they will be seen to have moved will not apply to them, because then it's providing for them an opportunity to continue the representation process of their respective areas where they come from. There are two questions I want to tie together. One is, how do you make sure political parties are living organs? And the other one is internal regulation of political parties, which becomes a serious issue in terms of credibility for election. And this is true, because we cannot have different levels of integrity. Accountability of integrity takes, it doesn't matter which position of leadership you are in. I think it's important at all levels. And that's why I said earlier that part of our desire, part of what as an office I think we need to do is two things. One is to strengthen the internal organs of the political parties to be able to manage themselves and actually discipline themselves. Because they are entities, we do not also want to be micromanaging those parties, but we need to strengthen the internal organs to function so that when there are disputes, they're able to contain them. And they are not run down by their own memberships in terms of the leadership, but they're able to control them. And the second one is we need to sensitize the public. The public who are actually the members of these political parties need to have enough information about the parties, how the parties function, how the parties are supposed to comply to the Political Parties Act, so that then the wider base of accountability of the parties is not just within the party, but also within the membership of those parties, where they come from. So that, to me, becomes a broader base for the purposes of holding our parties accountable and making them decent. Do we need to do reforms to have independent candidates regulated? Again, it's a conversation that we need to have. How will that look like? I mean, there was the proposal of whether we need to have them provided for in the political parties fund, and whether now we need to have them provided for in terms of regulation so that they do not become, runaway members who have no regulator because they are independent candidates. Then how do we put that in terms of what the Constitution says and what the Act says so far? But I would say that in terms of the reforms that we are right now, we have not featured the issue of the independent being considered probably as one of the people to be regulated, neither the consideration for the fund. So it's something that we're looking forward to see how that is going to look like as we move on. The issues of memberships in the system, I think I did speak to this and said that the system is allowing us to be able to control how members move from one party to the other. As opposed to maybe previously, for those who came on board earlier, we didn't have a system as such. But now we have a system that actually has a very good control, that you cannot register as a member of two political parties. Neither can you include somebody in a party without their consent. Neither can a party also join another, can an individual join a party without the consent of the party. Because when you apply to be a member of a party, then the party gets notification and then have to consent for you to be a member of that party. So it works both ways. Now, in terms of integration roles, I think you know that I've mentioned earlier that IEBC and ORPP have no options. We are joined at the hip because of the processes that we have. I mentioned about the nomination rules. I talked about political party registers. I talked about political party nominations. All those processes are certified by ORPP and are submitted to the Electoral and Boundaries Commission for purposes of elections. So we have to speak to each other in more than one way for us to be able to hold the parties accountable. And even the issue of party lists, the parties have to bring their lists to the registrar for certification, and then those lists are submitted to Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission for purposes of use in elections. The registers of parties are held in the office of the Registrar of Political Parties. So how do we then subject the parties to compliance in terms of using those registers during nomination? And I think mentioned earlier that when parties are almost doing their nomination processes, they come to collect certified registers of that party at that point in time to say that this is the register of party A at this point in time. Now, we do monitor the processes, and probably what we may need to find out is how much do we want to provide in terms of holding parties accountable to that compliance that can go to the office of the Registrar of Political Parties in terms of holding the parties accountable and make the punitive measures that can be given, maybe a punishment. Maybe those are issues that we need to look at and see how much then we can punish for issues of not complying. Whether everybody has 47 offices, 24,000 members, we have clinics for every year of all the 90 registered political parties. And all of you are members of parties. I have the status. I will also invite you as members. Can you go and do a ground check whether your party is actually compliant? I am sure at the beginning of this year, I wrote a letter to all the 90 political parties highlighting the areas where they need to comply, even as we move towards 2027. Of course, remember, we are not there to punish. We are trying to improve our democratic processes, but we also have to practice that within a framework that is constitutionally provided for. And that is why the compliance is important. Yes?
Just let him wind up. He will. Let him just wind up on the questions he has. He has a question by order. You're going to get a chance after this. Just finish with this question, then he's going to get the mic. Give him the mic just after this.
Okay, so I was talking about the integration, and I said we have a lot of integration that we have in terms of registers. Remember, as parties register for themselves to be political parties, we have to confirm that those 1,000 members from every county are registered voters. And the only way we can do that is consulting the Register of IEBC, which is the only custodian of registration of voters. I think we can leave it there and take the next.
There are two more questions we didn't answer. Yeah. One was whether you need the political parties fund by the Honorable Batandi, and another one by Mbui about compliance by political parties on violence, bribery, and those. Those two have not answered.
I think I did speak to the one about the violence. Because part of this violence comes from probably the nominations of the political parties, and it springs from not being compliant to the regulations, which you have the Constitution, the political party nomination rules, which you submit. And so I think what we have not probably provided for is what type of punishment can Registrar of Political Parties give to a party in terms of not complying with the rules at the point of nomination of candidates for election in that process. But that provision of the rules come to us. But they are your rules. We don't make them for the parties. The parties make them and submit to us for certification, for purposes of practice in terms of those offices. Do we need the fund? I think from what I said earlier, we gave the uses for what the fund is provided for. And part of the challenges we have, probably in the parties, that they may not be able to comply to most of these things is because we cannot provide funds that we do not have. Because what we receive is what we distribute to the parties according to the percentages provided by law in terms of the 70%, the 15%, 10%, and the 5%. That is all we can give. So whatever amount comes is what we divide to fit in the percentages as distributed in the fund criteria that is provided by the Act.
Thank you. Honorable Mwenye, please.
Asante sana bwana mwenyekiti. Tatizo langu kwa ndugu yetu anayetuzungumzia saa hizi ni kwamba hatujaona mpaka sasa wewe umechukua role gani kuhakikisha hivi vyama vya kisiasa vimestawi katika nchi yetu. Napenda kumpongeza bwana Spika